Exposing backlit photos is definitely tricky, but hopefully after this video, you'll be able to get it right almost every time. In the previous video, I talked about composing backlit photos, and a few people commented and messaged me about that video asking if I would do a follow-up video about how to expose backlit photos, whether that's for portraits or landscapes or whatever it may be. So that's what I'm doing. So let's just jump into it. This is something that a lot of photographers get wrong, especially if they're new to photography or if backlit photography isn't something they've done too much of before. And more often than not, what you'll tend to see is one of two things happening. They will either adjust their exposure until the camera says nothing is overexposed in the scene, which will literally mean your photos look like this. Your subject will be a silhouette, and your sky will also be quite dark. Or they will expose fully for the subject, ignoring the camera's exposure meter, and will end up with the shot like this. When the first method, when it comes to editing things and you try and brighten up your subject, you will probably end up with more noise than you would like, and you will also lose sharpness in your subject because you've underexposed things so much. With the second method, however, your subject will be bright enough, but your sky will be completely blown out with little to no detail or colour at all. What you ideally want to do is find that perfect middle ground where you don't end up losing a lot of detail in either your shadows or your highlights. Let's jump into a few examples. I'll show you a few photos that I took and explain things a little bit better. So I will start with this one because it was took during the last video. So here is the final photo after an edit, and here is the raw photo that Christina took of me. Now it was still quite early and there was a nice amount of light still hitting me, which definitely made things a bit nicer and also easier to expose. With these photos and how I'm going to tell you to expose things, you're going to lose some detail in the brightest areas of the highlights, but as long as you don't go too far, it doesn't really make a difference and actually adds to that nice glowy look at the end. So with this one, the camera would have been showing Christina that this area here is overexposed. It would have been flashing, telling you it's blown out essentially, and that's okay, only the brightest part will actually be overexposed and the highlights will roll off nicely to the edge of the frame. It can be tricky to try and use the camera's light meter for these shots because it will probably want you to adjust your exposure so that things aren't overexposed at all. I normally eyeball it and just pay attention to the viewfinder's bright flashing area. On the Fuji's, the brightest area or the areas it thinks will be overexposed will flash, so I just pay attention to how much of the sky is actually flashing. I'm still quite nicely lit in the raw image, which is perfect. You really don't want to be a silhouette like this in the raw photo because that's where you will get a lot of noise when you try to brighten things up during editing. So I'd say this is pretty much the perfect middle ground right here. And then with an edit you end up with this image. I'm really nicely lit. Yes, we are losing some detail in the brightest parts of the sky, but that doesn't really matter when the edit is done. It gives a really nice glow around me and we still have lots of detail in the rest of the sky and clouds. Oh no, my light just ran out of battery. Well, that's unfortunate. It adds a nice glow right through onto the table and stuff. But anyway, before I jump into a landscape style photo, I just want to show you another example. It's a photo I took of Christina, a portrait. It was backlit as well, and I could have done it slightly better, but we'll jump in and I'll explain why. So this portrait of Christina is also backlit. The sun is not directly in the frame, but the same thing applies. Here is the final edit, and here's the raw photo that I took. I really like how this one turned out, but if you really zoom in, there is a little bit more noise and a slight loss of sharpness around Christina's face. It's really not bad at all, and I think the photo still turned out really nice, but I could have lowered my shutter speed a little and brightened this one up by about half a stop or so at least. That way Christina would have been a little brighter and I wouldn't really have lost much more sky detail. By brightening her up a bit, there would have just been a bit less noise when I had to increase the shadows in editing. Because the sun is off to one side, it allows you to overexpose and sort of blow out one corner area in the photo, but as the highlights roll off to the rest of the sky, you end up with a nice gradient and some blue in there as well. So here's a landscape type photo of this tree, which was great. I do love a good tree, and backlighting makes it even better. So for this one, I have the sun partially covered by the leaves with just a little bit of a sunburst peeking through. So the same thing applies really for landscape shots. Increase your exposure as much as you can so your subject and foreground aren't completely underexposed, but at the same time making sure that only a small portion of your sky is overexposed. Like I said on Fuji cameras, this area will be flashing as you take the photo. For this photo, this area was flashing and overexposed, but the rest of the sky wasn't, so I know I'm not losing detail, and there will also be some nice colour as well. If you just overexpose the entire sky, it will just be pure white with very little detail and probably next to no colour at all. And then after the edit, this is the final photo, which worked out pretty perfectly for the look that I like. If you're trying to go for that silhouette look, you probably know what you're doing already, and what I just said doesn't really apply to you. Just expose for the sky and everything in the foreground will then be a silhouette. But yeah, I just thought I would do this video because, like I said, a few people asked for it, and I think it just makes sense to do a follow-up right after the previous video, so these two together just sort of cover the whole backlit shooting thing, I think. Pretty much. If you have any other questions though, drop them below and I'll get around to answering them, or if you want to jump into the Discord, share some photos, ask some questions, chat about cameras, photography, all that stuff, the link is in the description below. Hopefully this one was helpful to you. Hopefully when you're going out to shoot backlit photos now, you kind of have a better idea how to actually do it, how to edit them and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not going to blabber on too much because settings are boring and this talk's a little bit boring, but it is something to know, and like I said in the previous video, backlit photos are slowly becoming my favourite style of photos to shoot. But yeah, hopefully this one was helpful. Like I said, if it was, give it a thumbs up, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more, and yeah, more videos to come. But as we always say, take it easy, don't be a stranger. Need to charge my light. Oh, it's actually still alive. No. Totally dead.